Mr. Chairman, I'd like to welcome our guests as well. And I'm sorry that I think Major McGarvey and his crew have left. I would offer them greetings from their colleagues from the 174th Attack Wing that is headquartered in Syracuse, New York. We're very proud to have them there. There's a lot going on with drones in New York's 22nd District, which I know you're aware. So forgive me for a few statements here, but we have one of the most significant drone test sites in the world, run by New Air, a 50-mile corridor and test corridor that connect Rome all the way to Syracuse Airport, as well as in other areas. The Syracuse Airport is also the only FAA licensed airport that allows unescorted, unmanned takeoff and landings, which is critical for testing of drones. So we invite all participants to join with us in this exciting innovation, visit, invest, grow with this amazing community in beautiful central New York. Mr. Casey, just for a moment, my grandfather worked on B-24s and B-29s at Tinker Air Force Base and spoke of it with great affection his whole life. So Tinker is part of our family story. And Dr. Piquet, just one more biographical note. Several years ago, I was privileged to brief your ATMX team at NASA Ames, and they were investigating next-generation technologies that would be essential to manage airspace when you have a 3 orders of magnitude increase in the number of aircraft, right? 1,000 times increase. How do you deconflict that? We can't do that with current technologies. And it was a privilege to talk to the NASA team there. Look forward to partnering with you on that. But I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Casey, there are some domestic concerns about incorporating components. We've heard about that today from China into American drones. To the extent that you've not covered that, what are some thoughts about how we can do that? Is this, is it rulemaking? Is it a demand signal? So that we get outside investments? Are they asking for subsidies? What's the real solution there?
The real solution, honestly, lies in acquisition. It really, to me, from a manufacturer's point of view, this has nothing with regulating niche categories of application. We need to make a domestic capability very quickly. To do so, the government needs to become a buyer of drones. To do that, the government needs to actually accelerate NDA Section 848 compliance and actually maybe even support funding to actually go after that for a lot more small business. It's important to note that most of the actual UAS community is entirely small business, as in less than 500 employees, and the SBIR programs are really impactful for us. And in general, we need to actually make these components at home, and we don't need to make them in Europe. We don't need to make them in not just non-China countries, but we also need to loop in funding from the CHIPS Act to help support this effort as well. Because really we're having an issue in the critical components of semiconductors and chips as well, and the software and the actual command and control algorithms that we run being China origin as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that detail. I think that's very helpful. Mr. Jacob, could you comment about how the FAA currently uses the data collected by the FAA at these UAS test sites, like in my district? Is there anything the federal government can leverage from these test site data for our defense priorities? I love dual-use technologies. So for counter UAS or advanced air mobility, are we able to repurpose this data of what we're learning to meet our national defense needs?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Congressman Williams. That's an excellent question. First off, New Air is really doing great work. They've been really crucial in terms of pushing the boundaries of what we've been able to do in integrating U.S. into the airspace. In terms of the data that the FAA is acquiring from these test programs, and it's not just these programs themselves, but all UAS that are operating within the national airspace as part of the certification process, getting approvals to fly in the airspace. We're required to report back how those vehicles are actually operating. And it really comes down to providing safety data from the use cases. How well are those vehicles working? Where are the failures at? Really what's breaking in the system so that the FAA can then use that data to determine how best to safely integrate those aircraft in the national airspace. For the DoD side, that data is just as useful in terms of determining how those aircraft then can be integrated not only to the day-to-day operations of the DoD, but also then how to utilize counter-UAS systems to be able to evaluate them. And some of this goes back to something that Mr. Casey mentioned in terms of getting approvals for blue or approved U.S. Manufactured aircraft to be able to utilize those more into the airspace, but also that approval process, so that way we can streamline that and have states such as Oklahoma, which are working on their own blue UAS approval program, to be able to more rapidly approve aircraft for flight in the U.S.
Thank you for your detailed answers. That's helpful. Come fly with us in Central New York. Thank you.